The calm before the storm. The Galactic Council had ruled over the galaxy for centuries. They were made up of powerful, ancient species, each one more advanced than the next. They believed themselves to be the ultimate force in the galaxy. No one dared to challenge their authority, and the Council's decisions were law. As far as they were concerned, the universe had been shaped by their power and their will. In the vast, cold reaches of space, the Galactic Council watched over every planet and star system. They monitored every civilization, ensured they followed the rules, and maintained a strict control over the galaxy's balance. For centuries, there was peace, at least peace according to the Council. And in that peace, humanity, the young species from a small, insignificant planet called Earth, was barely a footnote in their records. To them, humanity was just another primitive species, nothing to fear or consider important. The humans had no fleet of massive warships, no advanced weapons that could compare to the might of the Council. Their planet was small, their population scattered, and they were still learning how to travel beyond their homeworld. The Council had never given them a second thought. But that all changed on one fateful day. The Galactic Council sat in their grand chamber, as they always did, surrounded by representatives of various alien species. The meeting was routine, a series of reports, updates, and minor decisions that were to be made. Suddenly, an alert rang through the room. It was not a typical alarm. The sound was sharper, more urgent. The Council's leader, a towering figure from the Kilthar species, raised his hand for silence. "What is it?" he demanded, his voice commanding attention. The communication officer, a pale-skinned being from the Centauri, quickly turned to face the room. "We've received a message, my lord," the officer reported, his voice trembling slightly. "It's from Earth." The leader raised an eyebrow. Earth, the planet that barely even registered on the Council's radar. The thought was absurd, but the officer's face was serious. "Shall I play it?" the officer asked. The Council leader gave a curt nod. "Yes, play it." The officer pressed a button, and the message flickered to life on the large screen in front of them. At first, the Council saw nothing but static, followed by the image of a human. An officer, it seemed. He was dressed in a military uniform, with a stern look on his face. His voice came through clearly, though the tone was cold and emotionless. "We are humanity. You have ignored us for too long," the human said, his voice unwavering. "We are not as weak as you believe, and we have something to show you. The power of humanity is not to be underestimated." The message cut off abruptly, leaving a strange silence in the room. The Council exchanged puzzled glances. The tone of the message was strange, as if humanity was challenging them, daring them to respond. But the Council dismissed it almost immediately. "It's a threat," one of the representatives said, a blue-skinned alien from the Zephyri. "They must be desperate. Ignore it." But the leader of the Council, the Kilthar, was not so sure. There was something about the message that lingered in his mind. A strange chill. For the first time in centuries, the Council felt a sense of unease, a feeling they were not accustomed to. Still, they brushed it off. The humans were nothing compared to the might of the Galactic Council. The threat from Earth was laughable. The Kilthar leader slammed his fist on the table, dismissing the matter. "It's nothing," he said. "Do not waste our time with such nonsense." The Council continued its meeting, but there was a lingering tension in the air. Unseen, unnoticed, something was stirring on Earth. The humans had made their first move, but the Council didn't know it yet. They didn't realize that the message wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. In the vast reaches of space, far beyond the eyes of the Council, humanity had been quietly preparing for this moment. They had spent decades, even centuries, building up their power in secret. They had worked in the shadows, unnoticed by the galactic powers that thought they could ignore them. They had developed technology far beyond anything the Galactic Council had imagined. And now, humanity was ready to show the galaxy their true power. But the Council would not learn of this until it was too late. They would not realize the significance of this moment until they found themselves face to face with a force they could not hope to understand. The storm was coming. But for now, the Council remained oblivious. They thought they were safe in their arrogance. They thought humanity was nothing. But in the silence of space, the true power of Earth was beginning to stir. And when it emerged, the galaxy would never be the same again. The mysterious signal. The Galactic Council had long prided itself on its vast knowledge and control over the galaxy. The members of the Council were brilliant strategists, each one confident in their understanding of every corner of the universe. They had crushed countless rebellions, dealt with hostile civilizations, and maintained order for eons. To them, Earth was just a speck in the grand cosmic scheme, a planet teeming with primitive life, but offering no real challenge to their authority. Yet, after the dismissal of the human message, something unexpected happened. It started as a mere blip on the Council's advanced scanners, so small and insignificant that it was almost overlooked. But soon, the blip grew stronger. It didn't make sense. The readings coming from Earth were unlike anything the Council had encountered before. The signal was powerful, almost as if it was being emitted from an unknown source of enormous energy. The technology they were seeing was unfamiliar, and more importantly, it was advancing rapidly. The Council was on high alert. No civilization could produce such power without drawing the attention of the galaxy's established powers. It was impossible. They had monitored Earth for centuries, and it was clear they had not developed any advanced technology of this magnitude. Or had they? Was the signal a product of some long-hidden human secret? The Council's leader, the Kilfar, called an emergency meeting. A palpable unease filled the chamber as representatives of the Council arrived, their faces set in expressions of confusion and concern. The communication officer, who had been working tirelessly to trace the origin of the signal, stood at the front, his hands shaking as he addressed the room. "My lord, the signal is growing stronger," the officer reported, his voice filled with awe. "We've traced it back to Earth, but it's not like anything we've ever seen. The energy readings, they're off the scale." The Council's representatives exchanged looks of disbelief. The Kilfar leader narrowed his eyes, his mind racing. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Earth has nothing." They were insignificant, mere children playing in the galactic sandbox. "We've seen no sign of advanced technology." But the signal was undeniable. The officers continued their analysis, their faces grim. "Perhaps it's a mistake," one of the representatives suggested, a tall, insectoid creature from the planet Drexstar. "Maybe it's just a fluke, some malfunction. Or perhaps it's a trick," another said, a sharp-eyed member of the Ultrant species, "a feeble attempt to frighten us." But even as they spoke, the readings continued to spike. The signal became more defined, no longer a random occurrence, but a deliberate, consistent broadcast. It was clear now. Humanity was sending a message, and it was powerful. The Kilfar leader's patience wore thin. He raised a hand, silencing the murmurs of disbelief around the room. "Enough," he commanded. "We will investigate, but we will not be bullied by these humans." He ordered a small fleet of ships to be dispatched to Earth's solar system. It was an unremarkable fleet, designed to be a show of force rather than a real military action. The message, they assumed, could be dealt with swiftly. Earth would bow to the Council's might as all others had. This was nothing more than a brief moment of confusion, a misunderstanding. But the Council was about to learn a hard lesson. As the fleet traveled toward Earth, they continued to monitor the signal. The further they traveled, the stronger the signal became, and with each passing hour, the sense of dread among the Council grew. What they didn't know, what they could not have possibly imagined, was that the signal was not a warning at all. It was a prelude to something far worse. Back on Earth, humanity was preparing to reveal something that had been hidden for decades. The signal was not a bluff, nor a feeble cry for help. It was the beginning of a new era. The signal was humanity's challenge, and the Galactic Council was about to face an adversary they could not ignore. As the fleet neared Earth, the Council's officers braced for the confrontation they assumed would come. But what they didn't realize was that humanity's true strength was about to become all too clear. The mystery behind the signal would soon unfold, and when it did, the Galactic Council would be left stunned by the sheer power that Earth had kept hidden for so long. Humanity's secret weapon. The Galactic Council's fleet, which had been dispatched to Earth in a hurry, continued to approach the planet with confidence. Their commanders believed this would be a simple mission, just a routine show of force to remind humanity that they were not a threat. Yet, as they drew closer to Earth, they couldn't shake the sense that something was terribly wrong. The readings were growing more intense by the hour, and the signal they had been tracking now seemed to be coming from the very heart of Earth's atmosphere. It wasn't just energy anymore. It was a force, something far greater than any of the Galactic Council's technology. This wasn't a simple military installation or secret weapons development. This was something more, something far more advanced than they had imagined. On Earth, the truth was slowly being revealed. For years, humanity had been preparing for this day, this moment of reckoning. The technology that had been secretly developed on Earth was beyond even the most advanced estimates of what any species in the galaxy could accomplish. Deep beneath the surface, in undisclosed locations, Earth's greatest minds had been working together in complete secrecy. The project, known only to a select few, had been designed to create a force capable of challenging the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The ultimate weapon, the Dreadnought. Unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered, the Dreadnought was an enormous battleship, capable of overwhelming entire fleets with its sheer firepower. But it wasn't just the size or weaponry that made it so formidable. It was the technology behind it. Humanity had discovered a way to harness and amplify energy in ways no other species had ever dreamed. The Dreadnought could unleash blasts of energy that could tear apart entire ships, and its shields were impenetrable to anything the Council had ever used. It wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's resolve and determination to prove they were not to be underestimated. The final piece of the puzzle was the human soldiers, trained not just to fight, but to outthink and outmaneuver their enemies. The Dreadnought had been designed with one purpose in mind: to protect Earth and ensure that humanity would never again be overlooked or dismissed. It was humanity's answer to the Galactic Council's arrogance. As the fleet approached Earth's orbit, the Council officers prepared for the confrontation they expected. But then, just as they were about to send their orders to engage, something unexpected happened. The signal they had been tracking grew louder, clearer, and then it stopped. For a moment, there was only silence in space. Then suddenly, the galactic fleet was not alone. On the radar, a massive shape appeared, something so large and so powerful that it dwarfed everything else. It was the Dreadnought. The first ship of the galactic fleet immediately opened fire, confident that its weapons could easily overpower the human vessel. But the moment the first shot hit the Dreadnought's shields, the attacker was met with an explosion of energy so intense that it sent shockwaves through space. The Dreadnought's shields absorbed the energy effortlessly, and the Council's ship was left in ruins, crippled by its own failed attack. The entire fleet watched in disbelief as the Dreadnought powered up, its cannons charging with unimaginable energy. A voice crackled through the communication system, a calm and steady tone that came from the human commander aboard the Dreadnought. "This is humanity. We are not here to beg for mercy. We are here to show you what we are capable of." The message was clear. The age of the Galactic Council's unchallenged rule was over. Back in the Council's command center, chaos erupted. The fleet was in disarray. The once proud leaders of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations now found themselves staring down a force they could not comprehend. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The Kilfar leader's face twisted in disbelief as he stared at the live feed of the Dreadnought powering up, its weapons aimed directly at the fleet. He had seen many things in his life, but this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Humanity was not just a threat. They were a force to be reckoned with. "We've made a grave mistake," the Kilthar muttered under his breath. The Council's officers began to panic, realizing that humanity's secret weapon wasn't just a ship, it was a turning point. The power and determination behind the Dreadnought proved that Earth was not some insignificant planet. Humanity had a power they had kept hidden, and now it was unleashed for the entire galaxy to see. The fleet, which had once felt invincible, now found itself in a losing battle against an opponent they had no understanding of. The Council was about to face something far worse than they had ever anticipated. A civilization that was willing to fight for its survival, to defend its home, and to show the galaxy that they were no longer to be ignored. The Dreadnought had emerged, and with it, humanity's true power was finally revealed. First contact. As the Galactic Council's fleet drifted helplessly, utterly outmatched by the overwhelming might of the Dreadnought, an eerie silence spread across the command center. Every officer, every representative from across the galaxy, watched in stunned disbelief. The once mighty forces of the Council were now reduced to mere bystanders as humanity's true power unfolded before them. The Dreadnought hovered silently in Earth's orbit, its presence undeniable, its engines humming with the promise of destruction. Humanity had sent its message, and now the message was clear. They were not to be dismissed any longer. The Kilthar leader, whose confidence had once been unshakable, now stood frozen in place. His mind raced, but no solution came to him. They had sent a fleet of highly advanced ships, expecting to intimidate a fledgling species. Yet humanity had turned the tables with a single vessel, one that by all measures outclassed everything the Council had. It was a weapon they couldn't hope to defeat, a demonstration of power that shook the very foundations of the Council's beliefs. The fleet's commanders scrambled, trying to regain control of the situation. They attempted to communicate with Earth, to negotiate, to find some diplomatic solution. But every message they sent to humanity was met with silence. Earth's response was clear. Humanity wasn't interested in negotiation. They had been ignored for too long, and now they were ready to show their power. It wasn't long before the Galactic Council made their decision. They would not back down. They would send their finest warriors to Earth. Surely, they reasoned, even humanity's most powerful weapon couldn't stand against an army of the galaxy's greatest soldiers. "Prepare the deployment ships," the Kilthar ordered, his voice cold but filled with determination. "We will show them the might of the Council's elite." Soon, a small fleet of landing craft carrying the Council's finest warriors began to make their descent toward Earth. These were not just ordinary soldiers. They were the Council's most battle-hardened troops, beings of immense strength, intelligence, and experience. Their weapons were the most advanced in the galaxy, and their tactics were unrivaled. The Kilthar was sure that this would be the turning point. Once the warriors landed, they would easily overpower humanity's forces and crush the Dreadnought. There was no way Earth's primitive species could withstand the combined power of the Council's elite. As the landing craft descended, the warriors began to prepare themselves. They had faced countless enemies in their long lives, but none like this. They had no idea what to expect. They had no idea what humanity had prepared. The only thing they were certain of was that they were not going to fail. The Dreadnought, however, had other plans. As the first of the landing ships touched down on Earth's surface, the Dreadnought powered up its weapons once more. It wasn't simply a ship. It was a fortress in space, capable of directing its full might to Earth's surface if necessary. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was preparing to make a statement. The Council's warriors descended, their armored suits gleaming in the sunlight. But they hadn't anticipated the level of preparedness they would find on Earth. The humans had set traps. The soldiers, elite as they were, found themselves ambushed, outwitted, and overpowered at every turn. Humanity's ground forces, trained in ways the Council had never imagined, struck with precision and speed. The humans were relentless, fighting with an intensity and cunning that caught the Council's warriors off guard. As the last of the landing craft arrived, the Council's elite began to realize the gravity of the situation. They were not facing a primitive species, nor were they facing an unarmed civilization. They were facing warriors who understood their terrain, who fought for their survival. Earth was no longer a weakling in the galaxy. It was a force to be reckoned with. The first skirmishes ended with the Council's elite forces retreating, something that had never happened in the history of the Galactic Council. The once immense warriors found themselves overwhelmed by the tactical brilliance and sheer determination of humanity's soldiers. The Dreadnought hovered above, watching, as if waiting for the signal to strike. The Killfire, watching from the command center, clenched his fists in frustration. His warriors, the best of the best, had failed. The power of the Dreadnought had proven too much, and humanity's forces had fought with a ferocity that even the most skilled Council soldiers could not match. The Council was in full retreat. They had been outwitted, outmatched, and, for the first time in centuries, they were faced with an enemy they couldn't control. "Withdraw the fleet," the Killfire ordered, his voice low and heavy with disbelief. "We will regroup. This isn't over." But deep inside, he knew that things would never be the same. The Galactic Council had always been the supreme power in the galaxy. They had always been the rulers. But now, they were facing humanity, an unpredictable, determined species with a power that they had never imagined. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and the Council had lost their grip on the reins. Humanity had taken the first step toward asserting their place in the galaxy, and the Council was no longer the uncontested ruler of the stars. Humanity's demonstration of power. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity at every turn, dismissing them as insignificant. But after the disastrous landing of their elite warriors and the retreat of their fleet, the Council could no longer ignore the fact that humanity was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The warriors of the Council had been outsmarted and overwhelmed by humanity's strategic brilliance and resourcefulness. As the remaining soldiers of the Council retreated, the Dreadnought hovered silently above Earth, its weapons powered down for the time being. Yet the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a species to be trifled with. They had shown their strength, and they had done so decisively. Back in the Council's command center, the once proud leaders of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations convened in a tense meeting. The Killfire, their leader, stood at the head of the table, his expression grim. He knew they had lost the upper hand, but he refused to show weakness. He had ruled for centuries and was determined to maintain the Council's position of dominance. "What do we do now?" one of the representatives asked, his voice trembling. He was a member of the Virthi, a species known for its ruthless calculations and cold logic. "They've defeated our warriors. How do we respond to this? Their Dreadnought is far beyond anything we've seen." The Killfire's jaw clenched. He knew the situation was dire, but he couldn't afford to show fear. "We must show them that we are not afraid," he declared. "We will send everything we have. The Council will not be humiliated by this species. Prepare the fleet for a full-scale assault." The Council's decision was made. They would launch a counteroffensive, sending every ship in their fleet to Earth to crush the threat once and for all. But as they planned their next move, they failed to realize one important thing. Humanity wasn't trying to simply fight back. They were preparing for something far greater. On Earth, the Dreadnought was being refueled and recharged. The weapons that had already proven devastating were now being enhanced even further. Humanity had more than just the Dreadnought. They had technology that allowed them to turn the tide of this war. Humanity was not just defending its home. It was ready to take the fight to the Galactic Council. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, humanity's forces were making their preparations. The Dreadnought was just the tip of the iceberg. The true power behind humanity's resurgence lay in the collective will of its people. As the Council's fleet drew nearer, the humans had no intention of simply waiting for them to arrive. They would make their stand before the Council could launch its full assault. All over the planet, Humanity's most advanced weapons systems were activated. Satellites, ground-based defense stations, and orbital platforms powered up, creating a planetary defense network that was unlike anything the Council had seen. The global unity that had once seemed impossible was now a reality, as humanity's different nations set aside their differences and united for the common goal of survival. Their survival. The humans weren't going to let their planet fall without a fight. The Dreadnought, fully powered and armed, became the symbol of this new unity. It wasn't just a ship, it was a statement of humanity's determination to never again be overlooked, never again be treated as weak. The Galactic Council, in its arrogance, had assumed that the humans would back down. They had believed that their superior technology and military might would be enough to subdue Earth. But the humans had something the Council did not: heart, innovation, and the unbreakable will to survive. As the first wave of Council ships entered Earth's atmosphere, they were met with an unexpected sight. The ground erupted in a display of firepower that sent shockwaves across the planet. The weapons that humanity had developed over the years were now fully operational. Massive energy cannons, laser grids, and automated defense systems, all aimed squarely at the incoming fleet. The first few Council ships that attempted to breach Earth's defenses were immediately struck by powerful energy blasts, causing their shields to fail and their hulls to burn. The once feared ships of the Galactic Council, which had been invincible against most enemies, were now being torn apart by the combined might of Earth's defenses. And then, as if the universe itself had chosen this moment to reveal humanity's true power, the Dreadnought made its move. Rising from its orbit above Earth, the massive ship unleashed a devastating volley of energy blasts at the incoming fleet. The energy discharges were so powerful that entire ships disintegrated in an instant, their wreckage scattering across the sky. The Dreadnought's shields remained intact as it powered through the chaos, unstoppable. The Council's ships began to scatter, their commanders realizing too late that they were not prepared for this level of force. Every ship that attempted to fight back was met with destruction, its weapons useless against the overwhelming power of humanity's defense systems. For the first time in the Council's long history, they were being forced to retreat. And humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Council's shock. The Galactic Council had always prided itself on its strategic brilliance and overwhelming power. For centuries, it had been the unchallenged authority in the galaxy, a force that shaped the fates of entire civilizations. But as the days passed, and humanity's Dreadnought continued to destroy their fleet, the Council's confidence began to falter. The once invincible might of the galaxy's greatest military had been utterly humbled by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. The shockwaves from the ongoing battle reverberated through the Council's command center. Every officer, every representative from the farthest reaches of the galaxy, could only stare in disbelief as humanity's defenses tore apart their ships one by one. Ships they had once considered impenetrable were now nothing more than burning wreckage floating in the void of space. The Dreadnought, a single vessel, had proven capable of doing what entire fleets of the Council's elite forces had failed to do: crush them. For the first time in history, the Council was powerless. Inside the command center, the Kilthar leader paced back and forth, his mind racing for a solution. The Council's once proud fleet had been obliterated, and Earth was proving to be far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The warriors they had sent to the surface had been forced to retreat, their pride shattered by the tactical brilliance and unexpected ferocity of humanity's defense. Now the very heart of their empire was under threat. Humanity was no longer just a nuisance, it was an existential threat. "What do we do?" one of the Council members asked, his voice cracking with anxiety. The once confident representative of the Wrath, a species known for its cold, calculating nature, now seemed small in the face of humanity's might. "We cannot retreat. We cannot appear weak." The Kilthar snapped, his voice filled with frustration. He slammed his fist onto the table. "We need to crush them, once and for all." But even as he said it, the Kilthar knew the odds were stacked against them. Humanity's resolve was unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. They had fought for their survival, united as one against an enemy that had underestimated them. The Dreadnought was not just a weapon. It was the symbol of humanity's determination to protect their home at any cost. The realization that the Galactic Council could be defeated by a species they had dismissed so easily began to sink in. The Kilthar had been so sure of their power. They had believed that the galaxy's strongest civilizations would remain unchallenged forever. But now, they were faced with a terrifying truth. The Council's once impenetrable authority was crumbling. They had failed to account for humanity's ingenuity, their ability to adapt, and their relentless will to survive. The Council's desperation grew with every passing moment. The fleet that had been sent to Earth had been wiped out, and their most advanced technologies had failed to even scratch the surface of humanity's defenses. The once proud members of the Council realized they could no longer rely on their sheer might alone. They had to think differently. The Kilthar turned to the communications officer, his eyes narrowed with determination. "Prepare a new message. We need to speak with humanity," he ordered. "We can't continue this battle. We must find a way to negotiate." The communications officer hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. "Yes, my lord." And so, for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council sent out a message of peace, not out of mercy, but out of necessity. They had no choice but to acknowledge humanity's strength and power. The message was clear. Earth had to be recognized as an equal force in the galaxy, or the Council risked losing everything. As the message was transmitted, the Kilthar leaned back in his chair, his face a mixture of disbelief and regret. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. He had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back, and now the galaxy would never be the same. A new era begins. The Galactic Council had never faced a situation like this. For eons, they had been the supreme rulers of the galaxy, controlling countless civilizations with a mixture of fear, manipulation, and overwhelming force. But now, that authority was in question. Humanity, a species once considered weak and insignificant, had shattered the Council's fleet, decimated their finest warriors, and made it clear that they were no longer to be ignored. The Council's desperation had reached its peak. The Kilthar, leader of the Council, sat in his command chair, his fingers pressed against his temples. He had never imagined he would be in a position like this. To send a message of peace to a species they had once deemed insignificant was a humiliating blow to their pride. But they had no choice. The battle was lost, and retreat would mean the total collapse of the Council's authority. The message humanity had sent back to the Galactic Council was clear. Earth would no longer accept the Council's rule. The power dynamic had shifted, and the humans were not interested in bending to a broken system. The Council's defeat was not just a military loss. It was a symbol of a new era. The Dreadnought, still in orbit above Earth, loomed like an unyielding guardian. Its weapons had proven devastating, its power unmatched. The humans, it seemed, had the capability to push the Council out of their galaxy. And the Council's warriors had been forced to retreat, something that had never happened before. A species had beaten them at their own game. As the Kilthar drafted the message of surrender, he turned his thoughts inward. It was hard to reconcile the humiliation of the moment with the centuries of dominance they had enjoyed. They had never imagined a species like humanity would rise against them, and now they were faced with the stark truth. The balance of power was changing. The galaxy would never be the same again. The message went out, humble, yet firm. It acknowledged humanity's strength and requested a meeting, one that would allow for negotiations, an official recognition of Earth as an equal in the galactic community. The Kilthar knew that any further confrontation would mean certain destruction for the Council. They had no choice but to recognize humanity's power and accept the reality of the new order. A tense silence followed. On Earth, the human leadership gathered. News of the Galactic Council's message had spread like wildfire. The whole planet was on edge, awaiting a response. Some feared that the Council was simply trying to buy time, preparing for another assault. Others believed it was a genuine attempt to make peace. The uncertainty was palpable. But one thing was clear. Humanity had won a victory unlike any other in galactic history. The leaders of Earth convened in a massive summit. The representatives of each nation stood together, unified by the unprecedented situation they found themselves in. The weight of their decision was enormous. The fate of their planet, and their place in the galaxy, was now in their hands. After hours of deliberation, the decision was made. Humanity would not back down, but they also knew that diplomacy was the only way forward. Earth would accept the Council's request for a meeting, but they would not be swayed. The message would be clear. Humanity would never again be subjected to the will of a superior force. The galaxy would now be governed by equality, not domination. The Kilfar and the leaders of the Galactic Council anxiously awaited Earth's response. When it came, it was clear and firm. Humanity had arrived. In a historic meeting, representatives from Earth and the Galactic Council came face to face for the first time. The Council's leaders, once so confident in their power, now stood across from humanity, humbled. They had no choice but to accept that the galaxy had changed. No longer would the Council reign unchallenged. Humanity's strength, ingenuity, and determination had shattered their illusions of invincibility. The negotiations that followed were historic. Earth, now recognized as a powerful force in the galaxy, demanded equal standing in the galactic community. The Galactic Council had no choice but to comply. It was not an easy negotiation, but Earth's resolve was unshakable. The Council, once supreme, now had to work alongside humanity, recognizing their place in the new order of the galaxy. And thus, a new era began. Humanity, once a forgotten species on a small planet in the vastness of space, had taken its place among the stars. No longer would they be subjugated. They had earned their place in the galaxy, not through fear or destruction, but through courage, innovation, and the will to survive. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and with it, the future of every species in the cosmos. Humanity had proven that even the most powerful empires can fall, and that no one is ever truly powerless.